Chris Hensley is a registered representative of Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer member of FINRA SIPC, investment advisor representative of Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and Houston First Financial Group are not affiliated.
The Houston Midtown chapter of the Society for Financial Awareness presents Money Matters with your host, Christopher Hensley.
Good morning, everybody. You're listening to Money Matters on KPFT Houston. I'm Chris Hensley. The time is now 11 a.m. Got a great show lined up for you today. What is the real secret to greater productivity, happiness, and success is a habit that is thousands of years old. Productivity has become an international obsession. We celebrate a work culture where people boast of long working hours, their extreme schedules, and how little they sleep. A constant stream of emails, texts, tweets, and more keeps us connected every minute, and we rarely put our phones down. Every moment needs to be maximized, and no time can be wasted. And yet, most of us feel something is wrong. All of these attempts at optimizing business and life isn't really making us happier. Ironically, it might not be making us all that productive either. In the groundbreaking book, noted entrepreneur and money manager Aaron Edelheit breaks down the myths around productivity and offers a startlingly simple solution: the Sabbath. The book, The Hard Break, The Case for the 24/6 Lifestyle, author Aaron Edelheit will be joining us very, very shortly to talk about his new book and kind of do a deep dive into the topic matter. So please stay tuned. Keep listening. If you are a long-time listener, you know we always use just the first few minutes of the show to tell you a little bit about what's going on in the Houston and the Gulf Coast region when it comes to financial literacy. We do have two talks that are coming up shortly. The one in May 26th, is going to be at Youngman Library. That one is for teacher retirement system, the state teacher pension system. I will be doing a talk on that at the Youngman Library on May 26th. And then on June 20th, we have Elaine Hermson. She is going to be talking on Social Security and Medicaid. Now, Elaine was, for 34 years, she worked for the Social Security Administration and is sought after in my industry as a financial advisor, sought after as one of the leading speakers when it comes to Social Security. So we're excited to have her down on June 20th. And with that, let's go ahead and maximize the amount of time that we have here with Aaron. Aaron, are you here?
I'm here.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining the show today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Well, I always kind of start the show the same way. Usually I'll share your bio with listeners so they can get to know you just a little bit better. So let me start with that. So Aaron is the Chief Strategy Officer of Flow Technologies. Since selling his company, The American Home, in 2015, Aaron founded Mindset Capital. It's a private investment firm. Aaron has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, CNBC, Bloomberg, and the New York Times, and has given lectures on entrepreneurship and investments all over the U.S., Canada, South Africa. Aaron serves on the board of the Moishe House Foundation and is a partner of Social Venture Partners in Santa Barbara working on homelessness. Aaron, once again, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe something separate from the bio?
Yeah, well, so the one thing that I would tell you that's kind of apropos of my book is that I'm a workaholic. And that I'm addicted to my phone, like most people, and that I'm driven in some ways that I understand, in some ways that I don't. And so I wrote this book as much for myself as for everybody else.
One of the things that you talk about in the book is that the process was actually a 3-year process. What kept this topic in the front of your mind all that time?
Well, I just realized that I hit kind of a breaking point. And I found that no matter how hard I worked, no matter how many hours I kind of squeezed in, I wasn't getting the results that I wanted. And not only was I burned out, not only was I struggling after having like 4 or 5 years of straight success, but I was unhappy personally, and I didn't have any real kind of balance or foundation in my life. And so I just kind of fell back into my tradition, even though I wasn't that knowledgeable of it at the time. I'm Jewish, and so I decided, well, hey, maybe I can start and take a Sabbath. So I actually started, and all I could do was I was so addicted that I would turn off my phone right before I went to bed, and I tried to make it to noon the next day on a Saturday. And I thought that was, oh my gosh, how was I going to do that? It was so impossible. And the reality is it's not impossible. And, after a while, I was able to build it up to a full day. And it was when there was a full day that I could finally, my life just started to transform. And I just realized that that my personal life was changed, and all of a sudden my decision making and my business skills started getting substantially better, and my business started turning around, and I started setting the stage for what became the American home in 2008. So this kind of day of rest, day of reflection really kind of transformed my personal and business life.
So I think you piqued my interest when you mentioned that you are or have been a workaholic, and that you felt burned out, and that kind of put you into this space where this book came from. When you implemented this full day of rest, the Sabbath, you were able to put yourself in a position where you saw your business start to soar. The American home business that you put together, that was able to come from this. Some of the research that you did about successful businesses, were you surprised at how many successful businesses operate on a 24/6 work week?
Yeah, so part of what happened is that, if I just go back to that time, is that when you give yourself the space to reflect and then rest, it rejuvenates you every week. And so then I was able to start this brand new business in 2008 at a time of great struggle and turmoil when the economy was collapsing, and I started buying foreclosed homes, fixing them up and renting them out, and people would look at me like I had a third eyeball. And when I started doing it, and I built that from 16 homes to 2,500 single-family rentals, sold the company 3 years ago, and when I reflected back on what allowed me to do that, what allowed me, and I went through a lot of ups and downs, which I describe. It wasn't like a straight success. That when I reflected back and I saw a lot of work behavior, I said to myself, I need to tell my story, and I wonder if there's other businesses and successful leaders like me that have taken the Sabbath and actually believe that it's a key to their success. So then I started doing a lot of research, and I found it in many industries across different faiths, whether you're religious or not, from Chick-fil-A, Boston Consulting Group, movie producer Devon Franklin, prominent venture capitalist Brad Feld. And there are many examples, along with decades of research from Stanford and Harvard and company-level research showing that being connected 24/7, that working all the time was actually not good for business. It is not good for productivity. It's not good for our health. I actually had to make my book not a scientific journal. There's so many references. I pulled so many out because it's overwhelming, the research that shows this. And so my book was really meant to say, like, hey, you can, not only can you take a break, can you take a hard break and do turn off, but it enables you to achieve the highest levels of success in today's economy.
So I love what you're saying there, the idea of rest and rejuvenate. Even you think about athletes who recover physically, build in recovery routines into their lives. It's not a can you do this, you should do this. From the results that you're seeing, you mentioned the Stanford studies. You pointed to very successful businesses like Chick-fil-A, and then really just kind of a whole list. So one of the things I wanted to ask you is, what are some of the ways that you and your family turn off the noise in social media each week, and how has that affected your family?
Well, before I go there, I just want to give you a stat just about Chick-fil-A, because it's really like the ultimate example. See, at Chick-fil-A, they did $9 billion in sales last year. They're, in 2 or 3 years, they're going to be the third largest fast food company in the country. The average Chick-fil-A does 4 times the revenue of the average KFC, and the average KFC is open every day. And so you can't have a more stark example of how you can absolutely succeed by taking a complete day off than Chick-fil-A. But if you go to specifically, and also a reference to your sports, you're exactly right, by the way, about the sports. The highest level of athletes today, the question isn't, should you rest? And this is in my book, but it's how much you should rest. Remember, the Chicago Cubs almost lost the World Series because their relief pitcher may or may not have had enough rest. And it used to be in baseball that pitchers would throw almost every day. They'd throw 9 innings a game, and you don't have any of that anymore. Someone like J.J. Watt, during the season, sleeps 9 to 10 hours a day and actually practices very little, but it's intense practices. So it's the latest in sports because of the value of the athletes, and they're trying to sustain longer careers, is about rest and recovery. And the question is not whether you should or shouldn't, but how much. But specifically how I turn off myself. Friday night, I turn off my phone, I turn off my computer, and I'm off. Like, it's just that simple. And that's the whole point of the hard break, is that you're breaking it. Like, I'm addicted to my phone. If my phone is on me, I am on it all the time. There are times, like, I have 3 small children, and, unfortunately 2 of my children have ongoing health issues, and they're doing well, but there have been times when my wife and I need to be in touch, or we're separated for some reason. And so I give tips and tools in the book of like how you can do this. But one tip that we've done, if we have to stay in touch, is my wife and I switch phones. Because the idea is to give yourself a mental break from this kind of tsunami of information coming at you. You know, I think I heard a stat that compared to someone 100 years ago, we receive as much information as they received 100 years ago. We receive it in like a day. So we're being overwhelmed by this information. And so when I switch my phone, which I've done a couple of times, there's nothing on my wife's phone that is connected to work, anyone trying to really get in touch with me. None of my social media is on there. So it's a nice kind of trick to kind of fool yourself if you do. And a lot of it is about preparation. Like, how are you going to prepare for taking this day off? How are you going to tell family members? How are you going to prep, work colleagues, et cetera? You really have to put thought into it. You just can't say, I'm just going to turn off and people will figure out. That doesn't really work. It's not sustainable. And so in my book, I try to share ideas and tips and tools of how you can take a hard break or a Sabbath. It could be a Saturday. It could be a Sunday. It could be a Monday or Tuesday. The idea is to give yourself a break. Ideally, it's a day when most other people or people that you love and care about have a day off. But the idea is to take a break. And then this way you can have the opportunity to really reflect and make good decisions. Most of the jobs out there, most of the ways that you can get ahead, it's not about working more hours. It's about making good decisions. It's It's about innovating. It's about having creative ideas. And you can't do that if you're burning yourself out and grinding yourself out. And the latest neuroscience actually shows this, that you think that when you're resting or reflecting, that your brain goes quiet or doesn't do anything. Actually, the latest neuroscience shows that your default mode network actually goes into overdrive when you rest. And what is the default mode network? That's the part of the brain that tries to piece together all of what you've learned and understand it, give it context, and develop patterns. So they find that the most creative people, the most creative artists have the strongest default mode network. And yet most Americans don't give themselves even 2 minutes to reflect on everything that's happening to them.
Wow, that is a lot. Let me unwind some of that, because that was a lot of information there. If you are just joining us right now, we are speaking with author Aaron Edelheit on his book, The Hard Break. Now, if you're driving, don't stop the car. You will have a link to that website, which is www.thehardbreak.com, as well as the Amazon book link that it's available on Amazon. That's going to be on the podcast notes as well. But Aaron, you were just mentioning to us, it's as easy as just picking a day, Friday night, turning off that phone, but that you do have to prepare for that. You have to kind of make some allowances. One of the things that you spoke about was switching phones with your wife in case an emergency comes up and you needed to get in touch with each other for family reasons or something like that, that you were able to switch phones and you got rid of your own work. When you said that, I smiled because my own phone went off and vibrated here on the desk. So it's like, yes, that's true. And really just the noise filter of all the constant information that we get on a day-to-day, and being able to get rid of that and take a break. You talked about some of the research with leading neuroscience, where even when we're taking a break, our brain is running in the background. It's really doing work that it's supposed to be doing, but it can only do that when we kind of filter out all of this noise around us. Let's kind of sidestep here and talk about some of the negative aspects to all this technology that we see. There are many ties to excessive use of technology and overwork and issues like depression. Could you discuss this a bit?
Yeah, so I think this is so we have a mental health epidemic going on in this country. It's especially pronounced in our young. And you were wondering, why is this going on? The number one cause of suicide for middle school-aged kids, the number one way that middle school kids die now is suicide. It used to be car crashes. College campuses, health clinics are now being inundated with mental health issues. Growing double digits every year. And we're seeing this very kind of stressful, anxious environment. The use of antidepressants is growing so fast. We're richer than we've ever been in general as a society. But what is going on? And I believe that, look, technology is amazing. To me, it's both the best and worst thing that's ever happened to me. It's the best because I have all of the world's knowledge at my fingertips. And as a curious, driven person, it's never ending. What I can learn, what I can study, what I can think about, who I can communicate to, who I can connect to. So it's amazing. The fact that we're communicating right now so effortlessly that my parents can FaceTime with their grandchildren. It's remarkable, and it's free. But at the same time, there comes a cost. And I think that we're not machines. We're not computers. We're humans. And we're built in a different way. And so this onslaught of information, this onslaught of communication, this 24/7 connection, this digital leash that we have, is not healthy. And is actually really bad for our mental health. And we're not meant to be constantly learning about this disaster in this remote place or that. It's nice to know that, but it's overwhelming, and we need to give ourselves a break. And so what we're finding is that there's that it really the best population to look at is our kids, because they never knew a place or a time where you weren't connected all the time. And all of the technology is built on the fact that the more time you spend on this social media or that, or on your phone, or engaged with this website or whatever, the more valuable those companies are. Your attention has value and is worth money to companies. So they are hiring the best and the brightest, brilliant people whose whole goal is to get you as connected as possible and have you stay engaged. That's why subject headlines are so compelling. That's why you're like, oh my gosh, I need to find out about that. That's why the news in general tries to make you angry or emotionally engaged, because they're trying to capture those dollars. And so you just need to understand that there's good and bad that comes with that. But you can't be connected all the time, because it's overwhelming and it's causing us anxiety and depression. And so my solution is turn off for a day. Give yourself a break. The world will keep spinning. It's okay. The world doesn't rest with you constantly being connected every day.
Let's talk a little bit about. I know we talked. We touched on the sports aspect, but then they're just specifically some of the physical responses. What are some of the physical responses to taking a hard break?
When you say physical responses, what are you referring to? I want to make sure I'm answering the question.
I guess maybe some of the health benefits.
Oh, well, the health benefits are, just by, if you want to increase your risk of heart attack significantly, your risk of stroke, your risk of injury, your risk of a mental health issue, work every day. If you want to live, a shorter life, check your email on the weekend. Respond to work email all the time. Be connected on your phone. The research is very clear. You're going to live a shorter life. You're going to have greater health issues, both mental and health. And just by avoiding that, just by giving yourself a break, you will increase your life. You will have a healthier life. And what happens for me is that they find out that it takes a certain period of time for the stress markers, the cortisol in your blood and in your body, to actually reduce after, kind of a stressful period. So you have to give yourself, multiple hours to kind of get through this. And it always, like Saturday afternoon, I'm like, whew, oh man, I am Aaron. I'm not work Aaron. In the past, I'm not CEO Aaron. I'm not responsible for these investors or that. I'm just Aaron. And there's just something remarkably liberating about that. And it's this incredible, I get a vacation every week. I used to, in the past, you go back, 15 years ago, I used to go on vacation for like 2 weeks or 10 days, and I try to disappear. And I'll be like, oh, phew. And the benefits would last me a couple of weeks when I got back, and then it would disappear. And then I'd be right back in the thick of things and struggling. But now I have a reset every week. And it's a lot more sustainable and a lot more healthy.
Let's talk about, I know you have some stories that you'd like to share with us that happened along the journey of writing the book. Can you tell us maybe some of your favorite stories?
Well, I think one of the key trends that the similarities when I interviewed executives across industries was how many people like me hit a breaking point and found themselves completely burned out and said, I need to do something different. This is not working. This is not only not healthy. I can't sustain this and be successful. And it's really remarkable, someone like the co-founder of Facebook, Dustin Moskowitz, who to this day, he has, I don't even know how much he's worth, but it's several hundred millions of dollars, possibly over $1 billion. And he has deep regrets of how he worked and how he conducted himself in the beginnings of Facebook. You would think, oh my gosh, you've made it. You have it all. But he has now health concerns that he's dealing with. He has other things because of how hard he kind of burned himself out, both physically and mentally. And he now believes that he made really some poor decisions because he was working himself so hard. He's now founded a new company called Asana that is a productivity tool. This is the most ironic thing. It's a productivity tool to help businesses with task management. And part of his culture is making sure that people in his company don't burn out like he does. And they are, I believe, they're the number one ranked company to work for on Glassdoor. So they're literally, it's like the best company that you could work for in terms of culture. And his company is thriving and doing really well. And so it's very interesting to just, see this person. And, we see all these examples and they're exalted up. Like, look at how hard this person has achieved success. But then when you dig in, you see that there's deep regrets, or that the person who's super successful has gone through multiple divorces and has multiple strife in their life and is just deeply struggling on some level. And they just sacrificed everything to kind of get there. And even if that's just one example, there's thousands of people that have tried to follow that example and have failed and have nothing to show for it. Aaron, and so the purpose of this book is to show that you actually can succeed and not sacrifice if you give yourself a hard break.
Aaron, we are actually bumping towards the end of the show. We've got just a few more minutes here with you, but I wanted to ask, one of the things you talk about in the book is the idea of faith. How has taking a Sabbath affected your faith?
So I think what it's done is that when you're not running around and you're not scheduling your life and not this noise that you mentioned is not affecting you, you suddenly have this space in your life. And you start asking yourself deeper questions. Some of them may be really concerning and tough questions. How am I living my life? What is my life for? What is the meaning in my life? How am I spending my time? And it's hard not to have these kind of spiritual questions come in.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of Money Matters Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, visit us on the web at www.moneymatterspodcast.com. Drop us a line on SpeakPipe on the right-hand corner. It will receive any voicemails, questions, thoughts, concerns that you have about the show. In addition to this, we recently launched a Patreon campaign. Click on the Donate Now tab to hit the tip jar and find out what Patreon's campaign is all about.